Cheers to you and books and me and my new YouTube channel. Welcome. Today I am making a video about the 5 summer thrillers that I read. And the reason why they're summer thrillers and not just thrillers is because I read them over the summer, okay? There's 2 of them that I really loved. There is 2 of them that I really did not love. One that I especially hated. So I'm going to give my little perspective, my reviews. There's not going to be any spoilers in this video, so if you're worried about spoilers, there won't be any. If for some reason I do blurb out a spoiler, I will make sure and put that in the edit so you know before it happens and you don't get anything blown for you when it comes to the stories. I would recommend 4 out of 5 of these, but I'm going to go through these and you can kind of see how I gave the ratings I did. I love thrillers. Personally, I read a ton of thrillers. Basically, sometimes I can get, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like sometimes with thrillers, you have these really high expectations. They start out super solid and you're like stoked, you're pulled into the story itself, and then you just end up fucking disappointed at the end. And so then you just feel like that heartbreak. And yet I have this toxic relationship with thrillers where I keep coming back for more, even though so many of them leave me wanting more, leave me disappointed, and it feels like this boyfriend that I have high expectations for, and every time he lets me down and I still come back for more. But all that to say, I'm still hooked on the adrenaline of it. I will say I'm not typically the type of person that reads thrillers that are very scary, or I just don't like being scared. I hate horror movies. I like to live in a happy world. And so the reason why I love thrillers so much is because it pulls me in for like the mystery, the suspense, just that like edge of your seat feeling of what's going to happen next. And when that's done well, oh my gosh, it's so satisfying. And so I feel like one of these books did it fantastically. But I'm going to start first with the first one I read this summer, which was First Lie Wins. I actually had a few people recommend this book to me. And so I ended up choosing it for my book club. I do a monthly book club, and I thought this would be like a fun, interesting one to throw in. We do 2 books each book club, and so I try to do 2 different genres, so that way you can kind of pick what you like. And so I did a thriller and a romance. And so this one for First Lie Wins, my rating is a 3.75. Not quite a 4, but not a 3 either. So if you haven't heard of First Lie Wins, this is basically centers on this character, Evie Porter, and she gets these mysterious assignments from Mr. Smith, right? And so she has to go do these different assignments, and in the beginning of this book, her assignment is Ryan Sumner. As the story goes on, you start to see maybe she wants something different. She's starting to fall for Ryan Sumner and the lure of a typical life, I guess you would say, away from this kind of spy vibes. Basically, the whole book is very secret agent spy, which is different than most thrillers I've read, which is why I rated it as high as I did, almost 4 stars. Not because it's like the best thriller I've ever read, but simply because it felt a little more unique. Personally, I liked the secret agent kind of spy vibes mixed with this like mystery and thriller that went along with it. And plus, okay, something that I also appreciated is so many thrillers I feel like have that typical couple and what's happening, who's lying type of thing, or it's like the buried family secrets or a psychopath with the unreliable narrator. Don't get me wrong, love all those, but this one didn't really have any of those elements, and so it felt a little more fresh and unique. I also read it very quickly. I flew through this book in maybe like 2 or 3 days. So that just shows you that for me, it felt very easy to read. I just sat down and kind of absorbed it. Overall, it wasn't a 5-star read simply because the ending, ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, these thrillers, the way it ended, there were some plot points that felt very unbelievable for me. They weren't, it's just when I looked back on the story after I read it, I was like, that doesn't really make sense, doesn't really add up, or felt kind of like far-fetched and out there, stretching it just for the sake of the twist per se. And so you got the twist, you got the juicy like twists and turns at the end, but some of them felt a little very out there and very far-fetched. And because of that, I felt a little bleh at the end. Also, it ends on a very resolved note. if that makes sense. I'm trying to explain what it is without giving anything away. There's some fucked up elements, right? And yet it ends, everyone kind of gets their happy ending. If that's a spoiler, I'm going to put that in there. And that it just didn't feel realistic. I was like, how is that happening? That everyone just kind of gets their happy ending. So overall, would I recommend this book? Probably I would recommend it. It was a good book club pick as well because we had some interesting discussions and conversations over it and diving into each character. The main character, I actually really liked her. I felt like she was an interesting narrator and was really entertaining, and I enjoyed her. And so for that, I feel like that gave me a lot more points as well. And also it was a quick, good thriller read without being scary, heavy, or depressing. So if you're like, yes, I want some mystery, I want some fun, but I don't want to like not be able to sleep tonight, then I feel like it's a good choice. Next book that I read is Behind Her Eyes. I actually read this book because it was recommended by Elise Myers. If you've seen her on YouTube, she just recently started making videos on books. I've been following her for a while, but I've just loved her videos on books. And she recommended this one. It was like her first thriller, I think, or one of the first thrillers that she read. And she just said like she couldn't get it out of her mind and she loved it so much. And so I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to give this a go. For anyone that doesn't know the story, basically the story of Behind Her Eyes is this character, Louise, is a single mom. She works at this psych office. And she has this like little fling with a man, and then she goes into work the next day, and it turns out it's her boss. Okay, already you're like, girl, what? Oh, then she finds out that he's married, and then eventually she ends up becoming friends with the wife of the man that she had a fling with who's married, and it gets very convoluted, confusing, and messy, and also just like, this is the one thing about the book that pissed me off the most, is that Louise is fucking stupid. She literally does stupid thing after stupid thing. But the whole plot point is you don't really know who's lying. Is it the husband lying? But there's like buried family secrets, and Louise gets involved, and it gets very complicated and messy. And so yeah, the story itself, I read it in one day. I literally flew through this book to the point that I stayed up until like the wee hours of the morning finishing this book instead of going to bed because I just had to know how it ended. I definitely recommend it in that I felt pulled into the story. I felt like I had to know what was going to happen. I really was kept guessing the entire book. I will say that one of the reasons why maybe thrillers are entertaining to me is because I'm not really a sleuth while I read thrillers. I'm not a sleuth when I do anything. I'm just here for the vibes. I'm a passenger seat princess. Take me along for the ride. I'm here to just enjoy it, have a good time. Whenever I watch movies with my husband, he's like making guesses on how the story is going to end. And I think that's so interesting, but that's so not me. I'm like, I don't know how it's going to end. Okay, like where's it going to lead me? Is it going to lead me somewhere cool? Like, I'm here for the ride. Take me along. And so I didn't really guess anything at all what was going to happen in this book. And maybe you did or someone else did who read it. But for me, I felt like I was just getting taken along on a really cool, interesting, creepy ride. By the time I finished the book, I think it was like 3:30 in the morning, 3 or 4 in the morning, I could not sleep because I was thoroughly creeped out by the ending. Again, I am a major wuss when it comes to scary things. Probably the majority of people that would read this book would not be scared by it. However, I was thoroughly creeped out by the ending. I could not get it out of my head. And so for that, I feel like it just kind of fucked with my head. But it was so interesting, and I loved the writing style of it. You just see the way it's getting built upon. It also kind of has some like paranormal, magical elements to it, which for me, I really love fantasy, so I liked that element getting tied in there. I know some people, when they read thrillers, don't really want a fantasy element, but for me, I enjoyed that. It's not super fantasy forward, but there is some like magical or not super realistic things woven into the overall story. Overall, it wasn't a 5-star read simply because Louise and the choices she made. This girl made stupid choice after stupid choice. She could not be any more of the cliche horror movie character that hears a scary monster outside her window yell like, come outside, and she's like, sure, what's going on, and goes exploring. Like, she's that stupid. She's the type of person that goes and puts herself in the stupidest situations ever, and you're like, why do you keep doing that, Louise? And so that kind of pissed me off, and it made me feel like how does someone go through life like that and not learn from themselves at all? So that was like the main thing. I just was getting frustrated with the main character because she just kept stumbling. I'm like, girl, learn. You're gonna just be the first person dead in this horror movie. I don't even watch horror movies, and I know for a fact that you would be the first one dead. That serial killer, you would not have a chance. And so that's how I felt about her. I wanted to keep yelling at her, like, why are you doing that, you stupid idiot? But overall, I think that it was a very entertaining read. I don't know if I said my rating. 4.25 is what I gave it. 4.25. Overall, maybe a 4.5. I'm going to bump it to a 4.5. Overall, very entertaining read. Highly recommend. If anyone says they want to read a thriller, I would definitely recommend Behind Your Eyes. I think it's very interesting, gets in your head, it's different, it's fun, and yeah, so great. Highly recommend. Okay, the next book that I read this summer, thriller, was Local Woman Missing. So I actually gave this 3 out of 5 stars. But then when I was going back to look at my Goodreads to see what my rating was on this and just write my notes for this video, I genuinely could not remember a single thing about this book. Part of that's me because I read a lot and I kind of compartmentalize things, and so maybe I just like forget it. But also I think it was kind of a forgettable book. So the fact that I read this book in June, which was only 2 months ago, and already I could not remember a single thing about it. But then once I read the description and stuff, I was reminded and pulled back into what I thought about the book. But overall, not the greatest, most memorable book. Oh, Local Woman Missing, though, is about 2 women that go missing in the same neighborhood. It happened about 11 years ago. So in the present, a teenage girl then escapes from captivity, and people are like, okay, is this the woman that, one of the women that got taken? And so you're kind of doing these flashbacks. You're flashing back between the past, when 11 years ago happened and they initially went missing, what happened to these women, and you're kind of hopping between point of views between, what were the characters? I can't even remember their names. Oh, Delilah, Leo. And so you're going back and forth between these characters, and you're kind of getting to see what happened 11 years ago, what's happening in the present, how is it connected. And overall, the beginning portion, from what I remember, was pretty interesting. It kept me, I wanted to know what was going to happen. However, I wouldn't say that it was the most interesting. It was a little bit boring. Also, the writing is very simplistic. So the way that she writes is like very blocky. So this person ate lunch. It was this. Then they did this. It's kind of like that. And for me, when I'm reading a story and it's very blocky writing like that, it kind of pulls me out of the story because I don't feel like I'm getting in that flow, right? I can't just like binge read the page because it's like block, right? And it just doesn't, I don't get in the same flow. And so I kind of got that feeling with this writing. It's very simplistic. I don't mind simplistic writing as long as I feel like it flows. And this had some issues with that. It didn't flow super well. However, I did want to know what was going to happen. And so I was enthralled enough to keep reading. And then you get like 80% in and the twists start happening. And the first twist happened and I was like, what the fuck, really? Second twist happened and I was like, dude, all of that because of this? And then the third twist happened and I was like, that's ridiculous. That makes no sense. What the fuck? How? And so it went from like a 4-star read to maybe 3 or even 2.5 star read just because of the end. Like, what the fuck? And also, this is another one that ends with like the happy ending and you're going, but what? No way would that end in a happy ending? Why is it just pretending all this shit just didn't go down and you're just going to be like happy diddly, let's jump rope and, be besties and drink hot chocolate? Like, it just didn't add up for anything. There was no realism to it. And so the way it ended was just didn't make sense at all. That's why I feel like this kind of stuff where there's like a mystery and then the police are involved and stuff, you're just thinking, man, if the police are this bad, I guess maybe that happens in real life too. But in this book, I was just like, how did this happen? I'm not even going to give anything away. But overall, I would say, I don't even know if I'd recommend it. Maybe. If you want something that's like a pretty easy read, which it was, the simplistic writing does have that benefit in that you can read it pretty quickly, like almost skim read it because there's not complex writing. But it wasn't my favorite. Not my favorite. Definitely not my favorite. But still, 2.75, 3 out of 5 stars. Next book. I'm about to some shit talking now. Okay, this one is They All Fall Down. I've just realized now that I have not been saying the author names. I'm going to put the author names and like the picture of the book so you're going to know next to each one. But They All Fall Down. This one I was so excited to read because one of my favorite mysteries I've ever read is Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. If you've read that book, you absolutely know what I'm talking about. It's so well written. The mystery is just like 10 out of 10. I love that book. And so I had someone recommend it to me. They said this is like a modern retelling of And Then There Were None. So I was like, very excited. I was like, okay, I'm down to kind of jump into this island. For anyone that doesn't know this concept, it's like a bunch of people get called to this private island, all for different reasons. They show up. They all have like a different little role, right? There's like a lawyer, a nurse, a financial advisor, a chef, right? And they all come to this island in the middle of nowhere. And then, of course, a storm hits and they start to discover that they're all there for a different reason than what they were told, right? And so then they're starting to try to guess, like, why are we here? What's going on? And then slowly, you start to see danger lurking. People start dying, and you're like, okay, what's about to happen, right? That's the whole theme of it. This book, though, the fact that they had the audacity to compare themselves to gorgeous Agatha Christie is offensive. It hurts my soul, dude. It was not Agatha. You disrespected her name. I might have honestly liked this book slightly better if they would have not tied themselves to that story. But they did. So I give this a 1.5 out of 5 stars. Because I was going in expecting like a good mystery, an interesting story, who done it type of situation, right? No. Instead, there was an awful narrator. This main narrator, what was her name? I can't remember. I'm so bad. Miriam. Oh, God. Miriam, literally, hate her. She was insufferable. In my opinion, insufferable as a narrator. This lady literally bitches and whines her entire narration. So the entire book, you're just like, it's just complaining, and I just felt like I was getting dragged down into this boring, repetitive, whiny. I was living in the head of a Karen, and I was not loving it, okay? And so that, for one thing, was the major fallback, because you're telling this interesting story, but you're telling it from this really horrible character's mind. No one wants to live in Miriam's mind. Why are we living in her mind for an entire story? And that was the main thing that made me dislike this book strongly. Something that was interesting is they add newspaper clippings and some like letters or emails throughout the book. And I liked that element. It was kind of like a palate cleanser for Miriam's mind of getting to like see kind of how the people got to the island in the first place and like what's their background, their story, but you're reading it as a newspaper clipping. And so that was something I really enjoyed about it. But overall, I was extremely disappointed by this. If it had not been based on Agatha Christie's book, actually, I might not have finished the book because I kept thinking it was going to get better. It was one of those situations where I had this hope that like, if I kept reading it, it was going to get better. It was going to become like this gorgeous bow tied off at the end, and it just never happened for me. It just never ended good. Even the end, it ended meh, and you're like, what? And yeah, there was also long periods of lag, and which is nothing like And Then There Were None. It just dragged on. And so for this, I do not recommend this book. Do not read it. I'm sorry to this author. So much love to you for writing a book. However, I thoroughly did not enjoy this book. Maybe do your research, though. Okay? Maybe it is your thing. Maybe I'm hating on a book because the person that recommended it to me obviously liked it, but I'm a hater. And I just felt offended for Agatha Christie and myself because I wasted time reading this book. Okay, last thriller I read this summer. I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars, almost perfect score. Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. This book, oh wait, before I begin, look at it's my little friends. Say hi. I'm just a guy. I like to hang out. This is Calcifer. He's a fire demon. Is that you? And he loves to be held. That's a lie. He doesn't. Anyways, rock, paper, scissors. I loved it. Okay, this book, from what I've seen on Goodreads, some people really don't like this book. I thoroughly loved this book. The story is essentially the classic trope of a thriller, right? Like, who's lying, who's not lying. Mr. and Mr. Right. That's literally their name, is Mr. Right. They go on this vacation to try to heal their marriage and try to, like, a last-ditch effort to try to, like, solve their marital problems. And so you're hopping back and forth between the point of view of the wife and the husband, but then you're also getting these flashback letters of every single year letters that the wife wrote to the husband, just kind of like where they're at in each year of their marriage, while also themed with like the classic like, marital gifts you're supposed to give, like wood, and I don't even know all of them. I already forgot them. But basically you're going back into these letters and then you're getting the point of view between the wife and the husband in the present. I loved this book. The symbolism was out of this world. I just felt like the way that the setting added so much depth to the story, the letters added so much depth to the story, and the way you got to know all the characters, and yet you also didn't know them, you didn't know who was lying, who was telling the truth, and I just felt like the whole story, I was so enthralled with it. I've also read Alice Feeney before. I think she's a really great author, so maybe I personally just love her storytelling style and the way that she just builds up the blocks of her story into the end, and there were so many twists and turns at the end that I felt like were great. It caught me by surprise. This was almost a 5-star read for me. Oh, another interesting thing about this book was Adam, the husband, has face blindness, so he can't see faces nor remember faces. So like the first line in the book is something like, my husband doesn't know my face, or my husband doesn't know who I am, or something like that, which was already just a good hook to the beginning. I wish I remembered exactly what it was, but it's something like that. My husband doesn't recognize my face. I think that's what it is. And yeah, it was so good. The beginning part of the story kind of creeped me out. It felt like there was going to be some paranormal, just like this, the setting was so good. I love when a setting is a character in and of itself. When you feel like it creates development for itself, it creates character development for the characters. It's just so juicy and good. It makes me feel like I'm in the world, where when I'm reading, I'm just like enthralled. I feel like I'm living there. And that's how I felt reading this book. Like the vibes were there. The vibes are there. Also, I feel like the way all the characters get pulled in, because there's so many different characters, right? And all these like themes of like parental relationships and marriage and lying and truth and infidelity and just all this like juicy goodness. I felt like it all came together really well. There were a couple loose ends at the end that weren't super satisfying. However, as I'm thinking about it, that may have been on purpose, that the author kind of wanted to leave some stuff loose for you to almost guess, to not even know at the end who was telling the truth type of thing. So that was sort of the reason why I gave it less than 5 stars, but maybe it feels like that was purposeful. Maybe I should be giving it 5 stars. I don't know. I'm still giving it 4.5 out of 5. I thoroughly loved this. I feel like I highly recommend Rock, Paper, Scissors. I also chose this for my book club pick. We talked about this for so long. We dove into like the setting and each character and who did we think who was telling the truth and our theories and all this stuff. And it was so fun to talk about. So definitely a fun one if you want to do like a buddy read with a friend or like do it with a book club. Great book for this. Yeah, it makes me want to read more Alice Feeney, which I'm about to jump out and explore. But yes, overall, those were all the thrillers I have read this summer. I am probably going to read more before the summer is end. I guess I still have a couple more weeks of this, maybe like a month left of summer. But yeah, I feel like I had a great time reading all of these, even the ones I hated. It's always a good time. Sometimes it's just fun to like outlet what you don't like. Let me know if you have any thriller recs, because like I said, I love reading thrillers. I'm always down for a good thriller, so if you have any recs, please let me know. I would love to read some more. But thank you so much for watching. I hope that you got some inspo from here. If you haven't read some of these books, that you're going to go out there and read them. I read them all on Kindle. Most of them I rented from Libby on the library app, which was fantastic to read for free and just get to like test it out. But yeah, again, thanks for watching. I'll be here next week and talking about some more books and bookish things and just having fun. And yeah, comment below if you have any recommendations for me, and like and comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. So much love to you, and go get your ass out there and read a book.